I'm pleased, on behalf of the Gurdjieff Foundation, to welcome you all here tonight for this remarkable concert. I just want to say very few words about the concert itself, because what the aim of this concert will become very clear, not in words, but in what you feel as you listen to this special kind of music. What occurred to me to say is just a way of framing it from one point of view. Some years ago, the anthropologist Richard Leakey offered a theory that prehistoric man survived successfully, not because of special implements or skills, but because of what he called altruism. What's interesting about his theory is that it implies that in human beings, way before, way more fundamental than any formed cultural forms or religions, the essence of a human being is at the essence of the human being is something we could call love. And all the great traditions of the world, if you study them, you see that there's this same concept at the heart of every human being, the true essence of man, before any forms, before any words, is something like love. It has many names. It's a nameless reality, but it has many expressions. And music exists in every civilization, every culture, every people. It's part of the essence of man as well. And so it stands to reason that although our modern times, the view of human nature is not what I've just described, the view is rather that man is a selfish animal with his morality overlaid upon it. But if the essence of man is this divinity, it stands to reason that this essential music of man, of human beings throughout all times and places, thousands of years ago, expresses this essential nature. And there are many names to it. This unknown divinity within us. And the music we're going to hear tonight is a piece, a fragment of the kind of music that has run through the blood and heart and veins of mankind since man existed on earth. It has that aim of touching this movement toward this unnamed center. And so if we could just perhaps think of ourselves as, for an hour and a half, as a kind of community of men and women with this question of who are we really? What really brings us together? What really holds us together? What is the real peace that holds us together? And in that sense, the word peace is one of the words that expresses our essence. Not just external peace, but internal peace, but the peace between peoples, cultures, nations. And our first artist speaks of that aspect of our nature and that aim of our life as the essence of his music. So please welcome, for introducing us to African music with this frame in mind, C.K. Ladzekpo and his family. Thank you.
Hello. Let me just put who we are here in context very quickly, then we can get down to business. I am seeking Ladzekpo. My brother Koko is here, and my nephew Agbi, my nephew Katamani, and my nephew Gamali. We come from the Ewe people of Ghana in West Africa. Ewe people generally occupy the region of West Africa from southeastern Ghana through the coastal region of Ghana, Togo, through Benin, and to the western border of Nigeria. We are people divided into 4 different modern African states. In our culture, there are very important teachings that guide the way we grow and the way we relate to the world. What we are going to do this evening is share with you some of our experiences. Normally, the Ladzekpo brothers will be playing a lot of drums and dancing and so forth. We never really have an opportunity to really actually do this kind of a format where we concentrate on the message rather than the heat. Today is going to be the message. African people are very religious people, especially the Ewe. Wherever we go, we take along our faith, our worship, our rituals, and so forth. Prayer is one of the most important aspects of the way we communicate with ourselves and the rest of the world. Next few materials are all prayers. And here we are. Togbile mayolo, togye jokombe mayolo, Togbile mayowe. Togbie jukumbe mayo. Nyama tumi gaka hunu egarolo. Ahuno vio babai. Ahunu egarolo. Nyama tumi gaka hunu egarolo. A tranche babai. Ahunu egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Ahunu egaro. A tranche babai. Ahunu egarolo. Nyama tumi gaka hunu egarolo. Ahuno vio babai. Ahunu egaro.
Nyama tumi gaka uno egabai.
A tranche babai. Ahuno egaro.
Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro.
Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. A tranche babai.
Uno egaro.
Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro.
Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro.
A tranche babai. Ahuno egaro.
Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro.
Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. A tranche babai. Ahuno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Uno egaro. Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. A tranche babai. Ahuno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Uno egaro. Nyama tumi gaka uno egaro. Ahuno vio babai. Ahuno egaro. Good. We will continue just exploring about what are we doing here. Now, among the Ewe, they believe that there is always a delicate balance in this world. One of the things that I realized that I have forgotten about until I went home quite recently was the way spirits and human beings coexist in harmony. When I went home, I visited a shrine with some of my friends from here. Richard Hodge was one of them. And we have so many deities all over around, just came over. All they want to say is, welcome. Some of them, I don't even know their name. They came all the way from Nigeria, from Dahomey, and we were in Accra. That kind of a balance, maintaining that balance whereby spirits and we human spirits can coexist in harmony is one of the most important elements of a traditional life. Akwoli koko bagbali, akwoli o bagbali o. No, not three. Akwoli koko bagbali, akwoli o bagbali o. Atsa vodu ama womo. Atsa vodu ama womo. Mo blema seba sa vodu ama womo. Akwoli o bagbali. Akwoli o bagbali o.
Akwoli ho bagbali.
Pera akwoli o bagbali.
Akwoli ho bagbali.
Enyo akwoli o bagbali o. Sa vodu ama womo. Sa vodu ama womo. O blema seba sa vodu ama womo. Akwoli o bagbali. Akwoli o bagbali o. Akwoli ho bagbali. Akwoli o bagbali o. Akwoli ho bagbali. Akwoli o bagbali. Bera ta 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 vodomo womo. Ta vodomo womo. Oblima seba ta 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 vodomo womo. Re koleo bagbelio. Koleo bagbelio. Vodoli ho 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 bagbeli. Koleo bagbelio. Koli ho 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 bagbeli. Koleo bagbelio. Ta 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 vodomo womo. Ta vodomo womo. Oblima saba ta 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 vodomo womo. Re koleo bagbeli. Koleo nagaveka. Vodoli ho 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 bagbeli. Koleo bagbeli.
Akweli ho 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 bagbali.
Koleo bagbeli. Ta 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 vodomo womo. Ta 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 vodomo womo. Oblima saba ta 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 vodomo womo. Re koleo bagbeli. Koleo bagbeli. That song was talking about that delicate balance that I was talking about. But talking about there is death, and it exists a long time, the same as life. You got to die. You got to be living. So, when you are living, live good, because you got to die. You are not going to live forever. Just a fact. A lot of holy people should have been alive today if death is not part of the whole balance. So there is life and there is death. We are going to move down to pay our respect to some of the divinities in every land. The very first one we will pay our respect to is called Fofi. Fofi is simply a deity that when you need some kind of a healing, it can be any kind of healing, just even a spiritual healing, you visit them and hopefully you will get some new energy. Now, these songs are what I consider to be the nourishment for our spirits. So, get nourished. We now know the Maro Baro.
We namro, but we namre. We namre, but we namro. We namre, the maro bao.
We now know, we now know, we now know, Fudo, we now know. We now know the Maro Bae.
We namro, but we namre. We namro, but we namro. We namre, the maro banyo.
We now know, we now know, we now know, Fudo, we now know. We now know the Maro Bae.
Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe. Tomorrow, Pana,
Mawe, coffee, mawe.
Tomorrow, Pana,
Mawe, coffee, mawe.
Tomorrow, Pana,
Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe. Assassin, Pumanyon, Wopanya, Assassin.
Everyone on Wopanya.
Our assassin, Pumanyon, Wopanya.
Everyone on Wopanya.
Assassin, Pumanyon, Wopanya.
Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe. Tomorrow, Pana.
Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe. Assassin, Pumanyon, Wopanya, oh, assassin.
Everyone on Wopanya.
Bera assassin, Pumanyon, Wopanya. Assassin,
Pumanyon Wopanya.
assassin, Pumanyon, Wopanya.
We now low, we now re. We now low, Voto, we now low. Winamre namaro bao.
Hey, winamlo, 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 voto winamlo, winamlo namaro bao.
Winamlo, winamre, winamre, voto winamlo. Winamre namaro bao.
Winamlo, winamre, winamlo, voto winamlo, winamlo namaro bao.
Mawe, coffee, mawe. Mawe, coffee, mawe, tromoro, bana.
Mawe, coffee, mawe.
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 Pumanyon mo panya.
Sasa, pumanyon mo panya. Sasa, pumanyon mo panya. Sasa, pumanyon mo panya. That song acknowledged the old lady of the sea, a deity that is part of the Fofi tradition. And went down to our family home and pay our respect to a very old ancestral deity also at the same time. So it's kind of like a medley of showing our respects going. We're going to move down to another deity, Afa. Afa is the divinity of divination, and is usually consulted whenever there is any doubt of the future. Before you do whatever, you will consult Afa and find out what is going on. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Eh bien que la touré, nyama y touré na magbozoi. Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo question.
Sakla tore nyama itole ne magbozoi.
Touré, nyama y touré na magbozoi.
Jakla tore nyama itore ne magbozoi.
Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo. Tofinya ogbama. Ma y touré na magbozo. No vivyo ogbama. Ma y touré na magbozo. Touré, nyama y touré.
Sakla tore nyama itore ne magbozoi.
Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo.
Sakla tore nyama itore ne magbozoi.
Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo. Tofinya ogbama. Ma y touré na magbozo. No vinya ogbama. Ma y touré na magbozo. Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo.
Tore nyama itore ne magbozoi.
Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo.
Tore nyama itore ne magbozoi.
Touré, nyama y touré na magbozo. Tofinya ogbama. Ma y touré na magbozo. No vinya ogbama. Ma y touré na magbozo. Touré, nyama y touré.
Yuinamulo be koliko somaja.
Yuinamro, koliko somada.
Yuinamulo be koliko somaja.
Yuinamro, koliko somada.
Be poroi.
Bon belebele, bon vai, bon
Be
belebele.
povie kwai.
Bon belebele, bon vai, bon belebele. Yuinamro, koliko somada.
Yuenaire.
Be yuinamulo be koliko somaja.
Yuenaire.
Koliko somada.
Yuinamulo be koliko somaja.
Yuinamro, koliko somada.
Be poroi.
Bon belebele, bon vai, bon belebele.
Povie kwai.
Bon belebele, bon vai, bon belebele. Yuinamro, koliko somada. Yuinamro, koliko. Hallelujah.
Aye,
Hallelujah. Attendu là.
aye, bachino towe la wome.
Oh, anu towe la bome.
Ai becino toi la wome.
Oh, anu towe la bome. Chinye la boma mi kuviare na maropo. Ahanya la boma mi kuviare na maropo. Oh, chino towe la bome.
Au aye, bachino towe la wome.
Oh, anu towe la bome.
Aye say, bachino towe la wome.
Oh, I don't know you love woman. I do love woman. Be cool, yeah, and a man of war. I do love woman. Be cool, yeah, and a man of war. Oh, I don't know you love woman. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Pe to kureke plomo ya zanungbe. To kureke
plomo ya zanungbe za kureke plomo ya zanungbe. Aza kureke o. Aloso moni ho plomo ya zanungbe.
Pe to kureke
plomo ya zanungbe.
To kureke
plomo ya zanungbe za kureke plomo ya zanungbe. Aza kureke o. Aloso moni ho plomo ya zanungbe.
Pa jinya buzo ni gbala zo to makata we za o mi se. Buzo na to makata we za o mi se. Jinya buzo ni gbala zo to makata we za o mi se. Jinya buzo ni gbala zo to makata we za o mi se. Ira microfaro danye via ogbe. Ira microfaro danye via ogbe. Jinya buzo ni gbala zo to makata we za o mi se. Hallelujah.
Gogo na dora gbanu na nyo.
Agbejabla, unoro na dora gbanu na nyo.
Agbejabla, gbejabla, gbejabla. Unoro na dora gbanu na nyo. Gbejabla.
Gogo dora bara gbanu na nyo.
Agbejabla,
unoro na dora gbanu na nyo.
Agbejabla, gbejabla, gbejabla. Unoro na dora gbanu na nyo. Naba.
Kagawu dora dora gbanu na nyo.
Agbejabla,
unoro na dora gbanu na nyo.
Agbejabla, gbejabla, gbejabla. Unoro na dora gbanu na nyo. Gbejabla.
Gogo na dora gbanu na nyo. Gbejabla. Unoro na dora gbanu na nyo.
Gbejabla, gbejabla, gbejabla.
Unoro na dora gbanu na nyo.
Hallelujah.
Ayrolo, anyerohe, anyerohe za, banyerohe, azanyerohe, ami ade so kunumbo.
Ayerohe, ayerohe za, ayerohe, azanyerohe, amude so.
Ayerohe, ayerohe za, ayerohe, azanyerohe, amude so aponugo.
Ayerohe, ayerohe za, ayerohe, azanyerohe, amude so.
Oze dai na moto
Amujagbe solo.
Oze dai na moto
Amujagbe so aponugo. Yawero, za, yawero, aozaerohe, amujagbe solo. Yawero, za. Yavarohi, aozaerohi, amujiji so akonugo.
Ayerohe, bayerohe za,
Yaverohi, aozaerohi, amujiji so. Kalawe zagba,
Ranyao, Wakalawe zegbe,
Ranyao, Kalawe zagba, Ranyao, Pera Kalawe zagba,
Wakalawe zegbe, Ranyao, Walawe zegbe, Ranyao, Kalawe zegbe, Ranyao, Wakalawe zegbe, Ranyao,
Kalawe zegba, Ranyao,
Kalawe zegbe,
Ranyao,
Wakalawe zegbe,
Ranyao, Kalawe zegba, Ranyao,
Kala. La mulo, la maduna, nyere kama chipoli fo, la maduna.
La mulo, la maduna, nyere kama chipoli fo, la mulo.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po, lala maruna.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po, lala maruna.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po, lala maruna.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po, lala maruna.
Lala mulo, lala maruna, yada kama chiboli po.
Ele vele ton kuolo donu gachi olo donu
Vele ton, kuolo donu.
gachi olo donu
Vele ton, kuolo donu.
gachi olo donu le
Vele ton, kuolo donu.
gachi olo donu
Vele ton, kuolo donu.
gachi olo donu le
Vele ton, kuolo donu. Yeah, we are going to leave here and go down to Vododan. Vododan, a Dan is a snake. So, may I say it's a snake deity? Yeah, we will pay respect to Vododan. We have a shrine of Vododan right at our backyard. And usually, when we pay homage to a lot of deities, it's usually the last one. Kind of like we are going back home. The song we will draw from what are we going to do? Basically, teaches about the whole thing about spirituality and making money, wealth. Vododan usually say they are compatible. There is nothing wrong with feeling comfortable as you build your spirit strong. So we will do that song and probably move on to do some other these things. And if the spirit moves, I will translate. Nyama kpɔkɔe ma ɖo o, nyama kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Edae le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖeka lo, nyama kpɔkɔe ma ɖo o, nyama kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Emi yɔ me bubu tɔ ɖe me, akoe nye dawo lo, edan ƒo kewo ɖe, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Emi yɔ me bubu tɔ ɖe me, akoe nye dawo, edan ƒo kewo ɖe, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Edan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖeka lo, nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o.
Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖekae, nye me
Kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu.
Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖekae,
Nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ vi ma dzi o,
enu kawoe nye dame nu. Mi yɔ me bubu tɔ ɖe me,
akoe nye dawo, daƒo kewo ɖe, enu kawoe nye dame nu.
mi yɔ me bubu tɔ ɖe me,
Akoe nye dawo, daƒo kewo ɖe, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖekae, nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖekae, nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu.
Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖeka,
Nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu.
mi yɔ me bubu tɔ ɖe me,
Akoe nye dawo, daƒo kewo ɖe, enu kawoe nye dame nu.
mi yɔ me bubu tɔ ɖe me,
Akoe nye dawo, daƒo kewo ɖe, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖekae, nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Dan le mu tso, ekpɔtonu ɖekae, nye me kpɔ koe ma ɖo o, nye me kpɔ vi ma dzi o, enu kawoe nye dame nu. Dai le muto akwato nu rekai ya makwa kwe maru ya makwa we madu anu kawe ye damanu iyo mapupu torema akwe ye dawo dapo ke mayo anu kawe ye damanu naba iyo mapupu torema akwe ye dawo dapo ke mayo anu kawe ye damanu Dela muto akwato nu rekai ya makwa we madu apo Manana to gbaji gbona no furege na mi
Manana to gbaji gbona furege na mi
Manana to gbaji gbona no furege na mi
Manana to gbaji gbona furege na mi
No furege na mi agbatore bo furege na mi Anora furege na mi anatore gba furege na mi Manana to gbaji gbona no furege na mi Manana to gbaji gbona furege na mi My brother Koko has just reminded me through the song that we have forgotten Togbe Kunde, another important deity. So, that is a short one acknowledging him. And thanks so much for having us.
Gurdjieff appeared in Moscow, in Russia, around 1912, seemingly out of nowhere, with a teaching of great power, great spiritual power. That was not recognizably from any one known tradition, but which the more one became acquainted with his work and his teaching and his way of teaching, it became very clear that it came from a very ancient source, maybe even close to the source from which all spiritual traditions emerge. And he had a unique vision, unique in its language, but very traditional in its vision of how far man, particularly modern man, had gone away, how far he had gone from his essence that we spoke of at the beginning. His true nature was cut off from him, and that modern civilization particularly had prevented man from expressing his real nature and from contacting it and manifesting it. This nameless peace, life, consciousness that is the heart of man and is the only source of human happiness and the only source of real service and love. And one of the fundamental aspects of his teaching was to show people by experience how far from that deep, great source of love and power and consciousness they had become. And he created many kinds of conditions of discipline and study and interaction, which gave people who wished to see the truth about themselves impressions of how far they were from what they were meant to be. And in those experiences, he felt, human beings, men and women, could begin to feel that deep yearning for being, which is part of our essence. And remarkably, among spiritual teachers, among the many conditions and forms of spiritual discipline and writings that he gave was music which he composed. And you will hear in this music so many different modulations of our yearning for that essence, our struggle to come in touch with it, our work, our hope of waking up to what we are meant to be. So this music, like all great traditional music, is not meant to circulate around the pleasure principle, but the joy and the harmony it brings is mixed with a certain longing that has its own particular joy. So if you listen to yourself as you listen to the music, I think you'll hear another of a unique expression among the three that we're presenting tonight of man's relationship to his true essence. We'd ask you to, there'll be several pieces played among the hundreds that Gurdjieff and Thomas de Hartmann composed, and we would request that you withhold your applause until the very end. So I'm very happy to introduce my great friend, Laurence Rosenthal.
I'd like to say not too much and really let the music speak for itself. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with Gurdjieff, it might help just to clue you in a little bit on the source, the origin, and the nature of this music. He, as Dr. Needleman pointed out, there were a number of different ways in which his teaching was expressed, certainly through his ideas and his writings, and through his personal contact with pupils in forms of study and forms of work together. Most notably, his creation of what he called his sacred dances, or sacred exercises, or sacred gymnastics. They go by all of those names, usually simply referred to as the movements. And then also he composed a large body of work, of music, all for the piano. And the interesting thing is that he was extremely sensitive to music, but he was not a trained musician in any sense. He could hardly play. He played a little bit of guitar, a little bit of harmonium. But at a certain point, early in his years of teaching, approximately 1916, he came into contact with a man who wished to follow him as a teacher, who also happened to be a thoroughly trained and very successful young composer, Thomas de Hartmann, whose ballets had been performed for the Tsar, danced by Nijinsky and Pavlova. And it became de Hartmann's, one of his chief aims in life, to bring to realization the musical ideas of Gurdjieff. Gurdjieff would dictate them while de Hartmann sat at the piano, and de Hartmann would note them down, harmonize them. They'd work out rhythmic patterns together. And though the ultimate source of this music was Gurdjieff, de Hartmann's contribution was immeasurably important. We, in fact, would not have this music without what he brought in his skill and sensitivity. Just a few words about the general output of Gurdjieff's music. It falls into a number of different categories. He was very interested in the music of the peoples, which he met in his long travels all over Central Asia, as far as Tibet, into North Africa, the Holy Land. He was in all of these places in his great search for understanding and for truth about man and his relationship to the cosmos. And so much of this folkloristic music came into him, not only from his own native Armenia. His mother was Armenian, his father was Greek, but also in more remote places. But beyond that, he met certain holy religious orders like the dervishes, which also influenced his music. And finally, in many remote temples and monasteries in Central Asia, he heard music which came into him, but which he didn't necessarily imitate in any way, but rather transformed through his own musical sensibilities into a language which was a curious mixture of East and West. In fact, his entire life could be said to represent a kind of union of Eastern feeling and Western thought. So I'm going to begin with one piece which will really show his relationship to the East. I would say one thing about Eastern music, and it also applies to African music, which you heard just a little while ago, in that Eastern music, that is music of most of Asia, is almost always completely only melody and rhythm. The whole idea of harmony, as we know it in the West, of chords, is really unknown in that part of the world. And so much of Gurdjieff's music evokes that feeling, but essentially he turned his face to the West in music. And even though the inspiration is frequently from the East, the realization is designed to be appreciated and felt and understood in the heart also by the Western world. of the peoples that Gurdjieff seems to have had a particular feeling for were the Kurds, who lived not far from his home country. And he evoked many of their melodies in his music. This one is a passionate song which seems to grow out of the very heart of the people, very full-throated and full of a kind of yearning. When Gurdjieff was still quite a young boy, his family moved from the little village in Armenia where he lived to the larger town of Kars, which is now in eastern Turkey, not too far from Mount Ararat. And there he attended a military school, a military church school, and sang in the church choir. And clearly, he was deeply affected by the music that he sang and heard there, and the cadences of the music of the Russian Orthodox liturgy made a deep impression on him and frequently appears in certain of his pieces. When Gurdjieff began to travel, he traveled, as we said, great distances, but very near to him was the neighboring country of the neighboring lands of Georgia and the Caucasus Mountains, which he knew intimately. This is a rather folkloristic piece of the Caucasian people, a kind of dance. One saw the kind of whirling dance that the Caucasian girls did. And it contains other overtones as well. There was a remarkable people that Gurdjieff had strong feelings about. They were called the Saids. They lived in that part of Asia Minor, Persia, that he knew very well. The Saids were very honored by the entire populace because it was thought that they were direct descendants of the Prophet Muhammad. We don't actually know that the Saids had any music of their own, but Gurdjieff composed many pieces which he called Saids, somehow evoking the quality of this people. And many of those pieces have a certain definite form which appears over and over again. And that form is that there are two parts to the piece. The first part is quite subjective. It is as though a man were singing of his life, of his sorrows, of his hopes, a very inward kind of song, never sentimental, but deeply felt. And then at one point, he lets all that go and gives way to dancing, and he dances. But even in his dance, something of that former melancholy still pervades the atmosphere. Gurdjieff's travels, his search for truth, sometimes alone, sometimes with a band of companions who shared his passion with him. His travels took him to some very remote places, which he writes about most affectingly in his book, Meetings with Remarkable Men. And in these remote monasteries, it is thought that certain parts, certainly, of his teaching emerged. He was inspired by what he found there and was able somehow to translate that into his own language. So many of the dances and pieces of music that he heard there also remained very much in his mind. And this one is from a series called Hymns from a Great Temple. The last two pieces show quite two different aspects of Gurdjieff's musical forms of expression. Gurdjieff attached a great deal of importance to mathematics, and in fact frequently spoke of the fact that music is mathematics in the sense that it is made of the relationships of different frequency vibrations and how they work together and against each other. And this phenomenon of numbers also enters into one of the fundamental aspects of his teaching, because he speaks about two great fundamental cosmic laws, which he calls the law of seven, sometimes called the law of octaves, and the law of three, sometimes called the law of triads. And there are a number of cases in which this particular phenomenon of numbers has entered his music. The law of three is found all over in many religious and philosophical traditions. And as he expressed it, it is based on three forces: the force of affirmation, the force of negation, and the force of reconciliation. And in a number of pieces, he tried to express this musically, and this is one of them. In Gurdjieff's magnum opus, Beelzebub's Tale to His Grandson, there is a remarkable chapter about an extraordinary man whom he met in Bukhara. He was a dervish who possessed not only extraordinary, almost magical powers, but also a kind of profound humanity which made a deep impression. There are wonderful stories about him in this rather long chapter, and this piece was originally titled after hearing a reading of the Bukharian dervish Haji Asfat's Truth.
And I really said,
I have been asked to give you a short talk about my composition. I promise I will make it short. You see, when I start to learn music in my youth, I didn't have musical background. I'm not saying my grandfather was a prince of music. No, he was a humble farmer. So I thought music is composed to interpret a picture. So most of my compositions are pictures. The Waterwheel is a circle room about 10 meters in diameter on the edge of the river. Is two gears, huge gears of wood, one vertical and the other horizontal. The vertical is turned by two axes, and as they turn, they will turn the vertical one, and the vertical one through an axe will turn a wheel on the water, which in it a long string attached to it going down to the water and come up again with terracotta dishes. They are going upside down in their way up with water, drop it in a small channel for somebody irrigating it to help the water move inside the plants. So the sound of the water wheel is the gears, huge piece of wooden tooth. When they meet, they squeeze. You know, then the steps of the accents, crack, crook, crack, crook, crack, crook. The rhythm of the terracotta dishes bringing water, in this beat. Somebody is sitting behind the accents to urge them to go. He gets hypnotized by the sound and starts singing and forget his job. And the accents will lazy a little and the water wouldn't come. Then the person who is sitting outside in the sun will shout to wake him up. So he will hit the accents, and the accents get excited and turn fast to change the sound of the gears, wee instead of wee. So you got the picture. All this noise is inside this composition. Thank you very much.
Amen.